Countries across the globe are racing ahead with high-speed rail, from nations with vast, sparsely populated lands to those with far smaller economies than Australia. For decades, Australians have been promised a faster, cleaner, more efficient link between major cities. But as of now, all Australia got is a lot of nice, high-speed rail renderings of what could have been. Why does Australia continue to fall behind other nations on high-speed rail? Before we begin, this is the first time we cover Australian rail stories, so any feedbacks would be appreciated. Let's go. For Australians, regular passenger services today remain capped at around 160 kilometers per hour across New South Wales, Victoria, Queensland, and Western Australia, well below the definition of high-speed rail. Trains have long been discussed as a way to reshape how Australians travel, especially through long-awaited high-speed rail projects. In major cities, urban networks like Sydney Trains, Melbourne's Metro, and Brisbane's City Train move millions of passengers every week. For commuters, trains often prove faster and more reliable than traffic-clogged roads, while also offering clear environmental benefits. In this setting, rail plays a vital role in keeping city life moving.
Thank you. I'm a Metro regular. I've been catching it since it opened from Tallawong, so I love it.
But beyond the urban core, the picture changes. Regional and interstate trains are slow, infrequent, and tied to aging tracks. With flights between Sydney, Melbourne, and Brisbane taking under 2 hours and operating dozens of times daily, planes have become the natural choice for long-distance travel. This dependence on air travel just shows how crucial speed is across Australia's vast geography, and how little has been done to modernize long-haul rail. Meanwhile, roads continue to dominate. Billions are poured into highways and bypasses, reinforcing a car-first culture that is especially strong in suburban and regional areas where trains simply do not reach. Buses fill some of the gaps, linking towns and stations, but often get caught in the same congestion as cars. The ambition for high-speed rail certainly seems promising, but why must such a significant project remain unmaterialized for so long? And does Australia truly place rail at the center of its transport priorities? We'll explore these questions in the next part.
On track, implementing high-speed rail in Australia.
It will bring Australian railways out of the 19th century.
Australia has seen glimpses of higher speed capability. The New South Wales XPT introduced faster intercity travel in the 1980s, and in 1998, Queensland Rail's electric tilt train set the national speed record at 210 kilometers per hour during a trial run. But high-speed rail in Australia has been on the drawing board for more than 4 decades. Since the early 1980s, every federal government has conducted studies on whether trains capable of running at speeds above 200 kilometers per hour could realistically connect the nation's major cities. Yet, despite years of feasibility reports and corridor proposals, the vision has never progressed beyond the planning stage. One plan, now under review by Infrastructure Australia, focuses first on the Sydney-Newcastle corridor, one of the busiest regional routes in the country. This 194-kilometer line would include an ambitious 115 kilometers of tunnels and be delivered in 2 stages. The project aims to support the additional 9.2 million people expected in the corridor by 2061. In the long run, it would form the backbone of a national high-speed rail network stretching more than 1,800 kilometers, linking Brisbane, Sydney, Canberra, and Melbourne. In 2023, the federal government committed $500 million toward early works, with trains expected to reach speeds of up to 320 kilometers per hour. But despite this announcement, the project remains at an early stage. Current estimates suggest a construction timeline of 10 to 20 years, with the government carrying up to 80% of the financial load. Australian high-speed rail, in other words, has once again barely left the station. However, on August 13, 2025, the long-discussed vision of high-speed rail took a step forward with a major announcement from the High Speed Rail Authority at a roundtable hosted by the Newcastle Cruising Yacht Club. CEO Tim Parker outlined the current phase of the Sydney-Newcastle project, fielding questions on economic benefits and engineering hurdles. While the business case submitted to Infrastructure Australia in December 2024 is still under review, Parker reassured attendees that the project is firmly on track. Local leaders expressed optimism, stressing that the railway's success depends on aligning housing, skills, and infrastructure planning with station development. But will this time it be different than the others?
Why has it taken so long for us? Why, and have we fallen behind the rest of the world?
The obstacles are significant. Geography is one of the most immediate. The route north from Sydney requires crossing the Hawkesbury River, a notoriously complex engineering challenge. Geotechnical drilling has already begun, but experts warn that tunneling and bridging will add billions to the cost. Australia's vast size and relatively low population density also weaken the financial case when compared to compact nations like Japan, France, or even Spain, where high-speed rail has proven more viable. Politics adds another layer of difficulty.
But many Gosford locals won't be fooled by predictable pre-election promise.
Changes in government have repeatedly shifted priorities, with projects paused, rescoped, or abandoned altogether. Unlike countries with bipartisan commitment to long-term rail investment, Australia's approach has often been piecemeal, treating high-speed rail more as a campaign promise than as a national strategy. This uncertainty deters private capital, leaving taxpayers to shoulder the expense of endless studies instead of tangible progress. Funding models also highlight the contrast with overseas examples. In the United States, the Brightline West project, connecting Los Angeles and Las Vegas, is privately led, moving ahead quickly at a lower cost. By comparison, Australia's government-driven approach is slower, more expensive, and more vulnerable to political cycles. Critics argue this leaves the project trapped in bureaucracy rather than focused on delivery. Demand remains the final question mark. Domestic air routes such as Sydney-Melbourne and Sydney-Brisbane are among the busiest in the world, with frequent departures, competitive fares, and well-integrated airport infrastructure. Convincing passengers to switch will require not only matching flight times, but also offering clear advantages, such as downtown-to-downtown service or reliability that air travel cannot provide. Ticket pricing will be crucial. With construction costs soaring, there are doubts whether fares could be kept low enough without heavy subsidies. So, how are citizens and passengers feeling about this project? The question of whether Australia truly needs a dedicated high-speed rail between Sydney and Newcastle has ignited heated discussion on several platforms. On one hand, people argue that constructing a brand new HSR line for such a short distance is cost-ineffective. They propose a more practical solution, upgrading existing tracks to support 200 km/h trains, similar to France's approach with partial high-speed lines. Using modern intercity rolling stock like Alstom could achieve travel times of around 1 hour 15 minutes, fast, comfortable, and far cheaper than building a full HSR corridor. Proponents of this view see it as a balanced way to improve service while keeping costs under control. On the other hand, advocates of true high-speed rail argue that half measures risk locking Australia into outdated infrastructure. They point out that Sydney-Newcastle's current rail line winds through mountains and national parks, limiting the benefits of modest upgrades. A dedicated HSR corridor, capable of speeds between 320 and 350 km/h, would not only slash travel times, but also serve as a proof of concept for the larger Melbourne-Sydney-Brisbane vision. Supporters cite international examples such as the UK's HS1 and the Netherlands' HSL South, both relatively short lines that still prove transformative. For them, high-speed rail is less about today's travel times and more about building the experience, competitiveness, and capacity Australia will need in the decades ahead. Unless Australia can streamline costs, secure bipartisan commitment, and draw in private investment, the dream of high-speed rail risks remaining trapped in planning documents, a vision often promised but never delivered. Ultimately, the debate goes beyond engineering and timetables. It is about strategy, priorities, and national ambition. Whether Australia chooses incremental upgrades or commits to a transformative network will shape not only how its cities are connected, but also how the nation defines its future in sustainable competitive transport. And that's where we pull into the station for now. Thanks for watching. See you next time.